when you start a new business, you want to do things that don't scale, right? Meaning you just got to do a lot of different things and kind of figure out what you're good at, what you like doing, what the market really needs, what problems you're solving. And then again, as a result of that, you can use that data to make a high quality decision on where to focus.
Welcome to Your Intended Message, the perfect place for leaders and promising professionals who want to convey the intended message for greater success. Every week, we interview experts who address the challenges and best practices to deliver your message effectively. That might be one-to-one, one-to-few, or one-to-many. And perhaps the most important conversation, one-to-self. I'm your host, George Torok. My guest today is Corey Quinn. Here's 3 facts that I think you should know about Corey. 1, he's worked 17 years in the agency space. And when we say agency space, we don't mean the CIA or NASA. We mean marketing. 2, as the CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, he helped grow Scorpion from 20 million to 150 million in 6 years. By the way, that's 7.5 times growth. And 3, he swam 2 miles in the San Francisco Bay from Alcatraz. And yes, you can escape from the unescapable prison. And that's why it's closed now.
Yeah. I guess the myth of the dangerous swim is no longer holding any water, as they say.
And Corey Quinn, welcome to Your Intended Message.
Thank you, George. Super excited to be here.
Delighted to be talking with you. And naturally, to say that I'm curious is not strong enough about 7.5 times growth in 6 years. I want some of that. Give me some of that. How can we learn from that? What's your path? What do we do first?
Okay. Well, why don't I jump into the good stuff, like the insights for the learning? So the story is the company that I had this, truthfully, George, just a career-making experience. I kind of lucked into it. My last role, as you mentioned, as a chief marketing officer at Scorpion, I almost didn't take the interview. I was recruited to go and interview at this company called Scorpion. And I live in Los Angeles. And if you've ever been to Los Angeles, of course, it's known for its horrible traffic. And this company happened to be about 45 miles outside of Los Angeles. And I live on the west side of Los Angeles. And so that, doing the math, like alone, just to do the interview, was like going to take, it felt like half my day just to go out there and do an interview. So I declined this eager recruiter. And he called me back and said, you know what? These guys are amazing. You really have to go out there. And I said, I'm sure they're great, but no, thank you. I appreciate it. In any event, I eventually said yes. I capitulated because I felt bad for the recruiter. And I'm so glad I did. So what I found was, so when I joined in 2015, it was an agency, a digital marketing agency focused primarily on serving attorneys. And something actually in that interview I drove out for, changed everything, which is when I learned that they had a client retention rate of 93%. And what that means is that despite the fact that we're working with SMBs, local service businesses, attorneys, they were able to retain a vast majority of them, right? And so that is unheard of in the agency space, especially when you deal with SMBs, right? You're typically looking at 60%, 70%, a lot of churn. Well, they had built this agency really with, I would call it like lightning in a bottle. Like they had something special and they really wanted to find a way to reach more businesses. And so what they did extremely well up to this point is that they had a vertical focus. They focused on a specific vertical market. And so they became wildly intimate with the target vertical market that they knew, which was attorneys. They knew the attorney business better than sometimes the attorneys would. They knew how to market and how to grow. It would be educating those attorneys. The second one is, and this is not surprising for any successful agent service-based business, is that they really cared about the client experience. So when you combine these two big pillars, they had this amazing agency business. Well, when I came in, there was a 6-person sales team, and it was a wonderful sales environment. My background is in sales and marketing. I was hired to come and grow this company. And I got into this sales. I remember going to the sales floor. The sales floor was basically a room separate from the rest of the agency. They wanted the CEO founder did not want the rest of the agency messing up the mojo in this sales room. And there was 6, it was all 6 guys, and the phone would ring and they would make a deal, right? It was this beautiful thing where they were able to have this beautiful stream of inbound leads. They even had a big metallic gong that they had on the floor that they would use to hit for one call closes, which happened like 5, 6, 7 times a week, right? It was an amazing sales environment. I was brought into this world because the CEO founder really wanted to accelerate growth. We were growing well, but he wanted to go faster. He wanted to get bigger. He wanted to help more businesses. And so I did what most people would do, most agency founders or marketing folks would do when you've maxed out your inbounds and you've maxed out your client referrals. We started doing outbound. Okay. And so what that meant is we would buy a list of attorneys, we'd give them to the sales team, who, by the way, were not very excited to start doing a bunch of cold calls because they were used to picking up the phone and making money. Right. And so we tried a bunch of stuff. We failed a lot of stuff. And one of the things that eventually worked a little bit and then a lot was actually sending gifts ahead of a cold call. And I could talk about that. But effectively, what we did is we were able to figure out outbound for attorneys. And then we took the recipe of working with attorneys and then we replicated it in another vertical market. This time it was home service businesses. Think of like plumbers and HVAC businesses. And we launched a whole separate division, separate salespeople, separate account managers that would effectively become as intimately aware of growing a plumbing business as our attorney business was at growing a law firm. And as a result of what I call now the deep specialization that we took in these vertical markets, we eventually expanded to a franchise and then medical and others. And what we did every single time that really worked was taking what I call a deep specialization approach, which is a combination of focus, saying yes to one vertical market and no to everything else. Number 2, having a strategy, which is a massive action plan to build a durable competitive advantage in that vertical. And then number 3 is to have empathy. You got to have empathy today, George. You cannot just look at a spreadsheet and say, well, yeah, there's a lot of attorneys out there, so might as well just target them. The reality is that attorneys, or doesn't matter what business it is, every single business type that has marketing budget is being approached by agencies all day, every day, right? I was on a client interview. I was actually interviewing a client of my client, and it's a med spa owner in the Pacific Northwest. It's beautiful. It's a family-led business. This woman is the head person there. Her husband works there. Her daughter works there. It's this med spa. And she would tell me that on this interview, I asked her about, so do you get approached by a lot of agencies? And she said, I get 3 to 5 cold calls a day. Some of these folks have my phone number. They're sending me text messages. They're sending me 15 emails a day. This poor med spa owner is just inundated every single day by agencies trying to pitch her. And the reality is that's true for every business owner, again, that has a marketing budget. And today, the only real way to truly break through and build a long-term successful agency business is by having a true empathy and care for that vertical market, because that becomes the differentiator, right? Clients want to work with businesses that truly understand them and can help them to solve their specific problems, not a generic version of their problem. So from a high level, that's what we did. We took this deep verticalization or deep specialization approach across each of these verticals, and it allowed us to scale, as you said, up to 150 million. Actually, we got up to 200 million. But yeah, so we grew quite rapidly by running this recipe.
So you talked about differentiating yourself with empathy. How does one demonstrate empathy on a cold call?
The impact of empathy happens before the cold call. What I'm a big fan of is interviewing your clients and understanding how and why they buy from you, so you understand the attributes that they're looking for. That's one piece. The other piece is when I coach my clients, I do this work with agencies. What I encourage them to do is to think of themselves not as in the digital marketing industry. I want them to think of themselves in their client's industry. So if you're serving med spas, you're no longer in the business or in the industry of digital marketing. Now you are a member of the med spa industry. And as a result of that, you're going to their conferences, you're joining the associations, you're participating in the associations, you know what's happening in the industry, and you're helping to further the interests of that industry. I'll give you an example. At Scorpion, we worked in the franchise multi-location business industry. Is interestingly, it's a big segment of our economy, but it's a relatively small industry. What we did to enter into that world is we became a part of that industry. What I mean by that is our leaders who focused on franchise, they became certified as something that's called a CFE, Certified Financial Executive. That is an 18-month program to become certified in that. We also joined a group called the IFA, which is the International Franchise Association. We would sit on their associations and in their committees. We would even go to Washington, D.C. to promote the interests of the franchise industry. We were genuinely a part of that industry. So when we go to cold call, when we go to market outreach to strangers, one of the ways that you could differentiate is by signaling like, hey, I am truly an insider, by using things like the right language, the right associations, the right badges, and those things will help you to separate a lot of yourself from a lot of the noise in the market.
So this sounds to me like this isn't a matter, if we're going to enter a new market, it's not a matter of making a decision on Friday, what we're going to do on Monday and start calling. This, I'm guessing months in the execution.
Yeah. And I'll back up by sharing with you the typical way that an agency gets into business, an agency founder gets into business. Now, this is not true 100% of the time, but this is a vast majority. It is someone who wants to be an entrepreneur, loves marketing, and begins to spread the word that, hey, I want to start an agency. And as a result of doing that, they're going to start getting business, and they begin to grow and grow. And the growth is from saying yes. They're saying yes to the local dentist, to the local furniture store, to the local ice cream truck maker guy, right? Like, just saying yes to everybody. And that gets them in business, and that's a rewarding way to start a business. However, after a period of time, saying yes to everybody begins to create a tax on the business, in that operationally it's more difficult, it's hard to stand out, differentiate, and so on and so forth. And so it's at that point that people typically begin to say, okay, I'm going to check out this specialization thing, or I'm going to consider this. And it's at that point, in this situation specifically, they will have a lot of experiences that they can draw from. They will have worked with a lot of different types of businesses, and they can do a survey. They can follow a specific process that I teach, that they can identify a vertical market that is both something that they like working with. There's an affinity of working with them. There's a level of care and empathy, but they also have good evidence that they can do good work, that they retain well, and then also that there's a large enough market for them to focus exclusively on that vertical. I'll give you an example. Do you know how many plumbing businesses there are in the United States?
It's got to be hundreds of thousands.
157,000. Yeah, 157,000 plumbing businesses as the last time I checked. And if you were an agency deciding to specialize, let's say in plumbing, and you, as a result of specialization, you said yes to plumbers and no to everyone else, after a year or two or three, maybe, you're able to capture 1% of the market. And you, let's say, for example, that you charge $10,000, you make $10,000 per client over a 1 year period. At 1% of the market times $10,000, you'd have a $15.7 million business, agency business. And by the way, profit margins are going to be higher because you're selling the same product to the same person over and over again, which creates an opportunity to create repeatable systems versus customized approach when you're doing more of a generalist.
So once you learn that industry, you now know the keywords, you know their problems, you know their touch points.
Correct.
And it's now like baking the same cake every day.
Exactly. You know the formula. One of the things we did at my company Scorpion that helped us to scale is we first focused on a vertical market, attorneys. And as a result of selling to attorneys the same product over a long period of time, we built what we call internally conveyor belt. Every single new client went through a process that was very, very clearly choreographed, that would ultimately produce the outcome that they hired us for. But internally, it allowed us to write custom software that would shepherd that client through the process from department to department. And it ultimately created an extremely efficient business that was all queue-based, meaning when a new client came, eventually the writer would see a new task in their thing, you need to write for this client, so on and so forth. And so that type of repetitive nature of a business is the way to create repeatable systems that you don't need to rely on humans on for, which also takes out the variability, which is also an important thing.
And now, Corey, when you first talked about specialization, what I thought, and I'm wondering if many people would think, oh, well, I can only work with one type of customer. But it sounds like you're talking about building a niche in one specialty, getting that going, and then looking for another niche in another specialty.
That's correct. Yes. So that is one of the concerns I've heard from agency founders who say, well, I want to build a massive agency. I'm not going to just focus on plumbers. And I've already debunked that by saying if you get 3% of the market, you're at $45 million agency, right? That's a pretty good business. However, what we did at Scorpion, for instance, is that we started with attorneys, and then we said to ourselves, we have a good business here. We could clearly see the path forward here. We're going to continue to bring on attorneys. We figured a lot of that stuff out. What else can we go do? And so we found the home services market, which part of the reason why we chose them is because if you look at an attorney in their business and a plumber in their business, there's a lot of similarities in that they're both local service businesses. They both have roughly a radius around the office that they're willing to go travel to, or people come to them. Attorneys are licensed by state, for instance. And the internet is an important strategic channel for that law firm or that plumber to grow today. Now, this is back in the day, early days. There was no internet. It was it was more seldomly used. People would use the yellow pages, but the internet became an important vehicle. And so, looking at plumbers and attorneys, we said, okay, they're suffering from very similar problems, and so we figured out how to solve it for attorneys. We could figure out how to solve it for home service businesses. And that was the impetus to go into that vertical market versus something else. So it was kind of an adjacent market, if you will.
And I guess another similarity is you don't want to have to call them unless you really need them.
Yes. It's the, oh shoot, or other S word when you're calling them. You get in a car accident, or if you come home and your floor is flooded, right? It's like, and then you go right to Google, I need an emergency plumber, let's go. And that plumber loves that call, by the way, because they could charge a premium and whatnot. And so that was absolutely true. People don't want to have to deal with attorneys, no offense, but unless they're in a situation they need to get out of.
Now, the attorneys that you've successfully served now learn that you are a specialist in plumbing business. Do the attorneys get upset and say, I'm going somewhere else?
Great question. Here's the reality. They don't know and they don't care, because what they care about is, and the reason, so I'll back up. The reason why they don't know is they don't go to our website every day. They're clients. They're busy building their business. That's number one. Number two is they don't notice that we're doing this thing off on the side about plumbers, because what they care about is, are we fulfilling the promises and exceeding the promises that they're coming to us to solve? As long as we continue to do that, they're not distracted by anything else. That's what they care about. The minute that we as an organization get distracted and say, hey, these finite resources of account managers who are servicing attorneys, we now want you to take on plumbers, all of a sudden that changes the equation where you're trying to get more out of the same, or you're different things out of the same resources. We did something different, which is that we hired new resources to only focus on that separate vertical, so that clients really believed and really felt in their heart that we were truly specialists and we were dedicated to them. They'd work with account managers. Even the sales team would only work with plumbers. And so they were able to have a really deep and value-based conversations, and we would work together in a very powerful way as a result of that.
So you would make a strong enough commitment to hire people that are specific to the new specialization, as opposed to saying, well, if it's Monday, you're doing attorneys, and Tuesday, it's plumbing, and Wednesday is dog catchers.
Here's the ultimate impact of that. The agency business, which is effectively you get a recurring fee every month, the longer they stay with you, the more value each client is. Like somebody's called lifetime value. And the way that I learned through this whole experience, the way that you win the agency business is you have the best lifetime value. At Scorpion, as an example, we had a lifetime value of roughly 3 years. Okay. And let's just say, for example, that we made $1,000 a month and they would stay with us for 36 months. So that would be $36,000 is the value of each client. Our close competitors only kept their clients for 12 months. And so their lifetime value was $12,000. Well, as a result of, we knew that we could keep them for 36 months and make $36,000. We were able to spend more and market better, do better marketing campaigns, have a bigger booth, do bigger campaigns, more interesting and compelling campaigns than our competitors could, because they couldn't spend that much. They were hamstrung by the fact that they only going to make $12,000 per client.
And Corey, how do you clarify the message on your website? Where do they look, and are they going to get confusing messages? Sure.
So the homepage is the most valuable page of an agency or any business, right? That's where your people who are considering reaching out to you and talking to your sales team, they're going to go to your website first. So there's a great saying by Donald Miller. He says, if you confuse, you lose, right? And so the first thing you want to do with the headline is, marketing for, vertical market. So marketing for plumbers or lead gen for plumbers. You want to make that really clear about what problem you solve. But then as you go through the homepage, you want to communicate through visual assets like badges and client testimonials that, hey, you are a specialist, as well as in the copy. You want to use words like, if you're targeting plumbers, jobs and not cases or clients, right? And so you do that through clearly just doing the best you can to clearly signal that, hey, we understand your specific problem at a deep level. We understand you, and we have a lot of evidence to back up all of our claims.
So I'm a plumber and I've heard of you guys. And so I check your website.
Yeah.
How do you ensure that I see the plumbing language and not the law firm language?
That's a great question. And it's nuanced, which is why I like it. So I'll tell you about Scorpion. So we had, the website was made up of a homepage and like the corporate information, like about us, our history, and so on and so forth. Then we would have these mini sites for each of our vertical markets. So for instance, if you were an attorney, you would go to the homepage, you go to who we serve, attorneys. But we did something that was pretty tricky and also helpful, which was for the people who worked for our law firm clients, whether that be sales, marketing, account management, their business cards, their footer, their email address was all scorpionlegal.com. And that was and you would read, if you went to that URL, and you can go today, it will redirect you to scorpion.co/law firms. And the purpose of that is that we wanted to reinforce this specialization that we knew that if they were going there, they didn't care that we did the plumbing and all that stuff. So we just put all that stuff to the side. We made sure that everything that they saw to the best of our ability was the fact that we were specialists in their vertical market.
How many specializations can one firm sustain?
Well, I'll tell you about how we did it. With the attorneys, we had been doing it for a while. So we had really built a great machine. There was a great profitability. That profitability was reinvested in the next vertical market. Anytime you go into a new vertical market, it's likely that you're not known, right? Unless you're like McDonald's, right? You're a new quantity, and it takes a couple of years to really build up a lot of visibility and a lot of awareness and referrals and so on and so forth in that vertical market. So it is expensive to build out the vertical market. Of course, the reason why you do that is over time, your ability to generate word of mouth is exponentially high because you're working with a lot of businesses in that vertical market, and people talk, right? There's a lot of especially if you are helping businesses in that vertical market do exceedingly well, word gets around, right? But you have to be prepared to invest over a year, 2 years to really build up that momentum in the vertical market. And so what that means is you need to have good cash flow, good profits that you could plow into that vertical market. And so that, I think, is the number one constraint in your ability to launch, let's say, a lot of verticals at once. So your ability, I think there's, in the big picture at Scorpion, we stopped expanding verticals, I think about 3 of them or 4 of them, ultimately because instead of continuing to go to vertical by vertical, we said, hey, what other problems can we solve for our home services clients in addition to website marketing? And that led us to start building software and helping other adjacent problems, but for the same vertical market.
So you're well established in that vertical. Correct. And you built trust. And so now you're saying, what else can we do with them that can fit within our...
Correct. Building it onto our current solution as an add-on. So for example, digital marketing is a very measurable type of marketing. Well, we could build dashboards, or we could build, further from that is we could build some tooling around email marketing. Since you're in our system anyways, we can help you just do your email marketing. And oh, by the way, we can help you do your chat and so on and so forth. And so, based on the concept that the most expensive sale is the first one. If you have a happy client, they're going to be more receptive to buying more stuff from you, right? And that's the path that we ended up going down as well.
That's something worth remembering. The most expensive sale is the first one. So when planning this, a firm needs to keep in mind that there's going to be upfront investment of time and money.
Yes.
And once you make that first sale, after that, you start to get closer to profitability on this new business.
Correct. Client of mine who went from being a generalist agency, decided to focus down on restoration. They started with 3 restoration clients. They now have 20. They have a lot of momentum. And what they said to me was that every sale that we do, it is easier and it's shorter period of time, because on our website now there's a lot more evidence that we are special. We know this industry. We've solved this problem for others. And so as a result of that, the results from sales are accelerating.
Is there a danger when you specialize in a market? Is there a danger of new clients saying, I don't want to work with you because you're helping my competition?
Yeah, there is definitely that case. Some vertical markets are more sensitive, I would say, to you working with the competition. And so it's definitely something you have to navigate in the market. The best way to approach it, there's a lot of ways to approach it, but the best initial way to approach it is we limit the number of clients per market, 2 to 3. And then you could also help to ensure internally that the information or the data is not shared across those competitors. That's typically what you see agencies doing. There's other sort of more sophisticated ways to approach that, but that is the sort of the basic way you would deal with that.
If you were starting out an agency from scratch today, which approach would you take? Would you specialize right away, or would you take wherever you can get the money?
So right now, because I've thought about it a lot, is I would specialize, and I already know what vertical market I would specialize in. And by the way, it's mental health because I am married to a psychiatrist and my mom's a therapist and so on and so forth. So I'm very interested. I'm very interested and intimately aware of the industry. It's underserved, by the way. But if I was younger and I was eager entrepreneur, and I didn't have some kind of predisposition to a vertical market, for instance, you didn't grow up in a house of plumbers, right? And you automatically know the industry. If you don't have any of that, then I recommend you start as more of a generalist. You just go out and start saying yes to everybody. There's a guy, his name is Paul Graham. He's sort of a guru in the SaaS space. He helps advise SaaS startups, very well known in that community. And he says that when you start a new business, you want to do things that don't scale, right? Meaning you just got to do a lot of different things and kind of figure out what you're good at, what you like doing, what the market really needs, what problems you're solving. And then again, as a result of that, you can use that data to make a high quality decision on where to focus.
So try all the flavors until you find the one that you really like the most.
It's like dating, right? You gotta, it's like out of college, start dating around, see who you like, and you'll learn a lot about yourself and about other people at the same time.
Corey, if for people who'd like to know more about you, your service, and your book, where can they find that?
So my book is Anyone, Not Everyone, and it talks all about the same concept that we've been discussing, George. It is a 5-step process for ultimately escaping founder-led sales through specialization, creating more process in your business. And the best place for folks to get more of this, I'm actually going to give your listeners an offer to actually download the free version of the audiobook on my website. I saw you just do that as well, which is thank you very much. And so you can go to anyonenoteveryone.com. It's the name of the book, anyonenoteveryone.com. And there you can sign up to get my full audiobook for free. There's also a really great workbook that you can use to complement the book and the exercises there.
Corey, if you could sit with an owner of a service business in general, not necessarily a marketing agency, but just a service business, if you could give them 1, 2, or 3 pieces of advice of how they could rapidly grow their business over the next few years, what might be that advice?
Absolutely. So when you say rapidly grow, I'm going to assume that they don't want to be a small boutique kind of business, right? They genuinely want to grow a significant business, maybe something that's worth selling or can be sold down the road. Number one, and this will not be a surprise to you, George, but I'm going to recommend that they find a vertical market that they care about, that they want to be a part of, that they really want to support and grow. One of the questions I ask my clients is, after a couple of years through specialization, you wake up and your business is full of attorneys or plumbers or manufacturers. Is that going to excite you, right? That's a very important thing because everyone in the company drafts off the energy of the founder. So that's number one. I would say number 2 is figure out how to systematize or take an operationally focused approach to sales. Where a lot of service businesses get caught up is every sale is bespoke. There's pricing is always an issue. You're always trying to come up with the best, most custom solutions. And I think that is a big barrier to being able to grow large. In that, when you have more complexity in the sales process, you have more dependence on the founder, and that's ultimately going to stop you from growing. Right? You need to have a repeatable sales process that is not dependent on the founder. So you have to strip out all of the variables from the sales process, make it much more operationally driven or streamlined. Those are the 2 big ones that come to mind. Yeah, I think the only other one is, and this is less on the sales and marketing, but once you start selling the same product to the same audience over and over again, challenging yourself to find ways to streamline the execution of that so that you're able to maintain a high level of quality from the work output that you do, but at the same time, not requiring a lot of, let's say, bespoke or context switching in your organization. You want to be much more process driven.
A lot of that resonates with me. My guest today is Corey Quinn, reminding you that marketing could be just like dating. And remember, anyone, not everyone.
If you like what you heard, tell your friends. And post your 5-star review on Apple Podcasts because that helps more listeners find us. Come back every week for more practical insights to help you deliver your intended message. I'm your host, George Torok.